Welcome to episode 365 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. In today's episode, I'm excited to have Dr. Felicity Heathcote-Marcz back on the show. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. In today's conversation, I am joined by Dr. Felicity Heathcote-Marcz, who was on the show once before, talking about her work in ethnographic research. Yes, we will talk a little about what that is and what it means in today's episode if you aren't yet familiar, and her previous episode is linked in the show notes for you as well. Felicity will introduce herself in a moment, but here's a little bit about her. She specializes in immersive research methodologies, providing rigorous research design and project outcomes to both large and small organizations. In her new consultancy, Bear Analysis, Felicity aims to bridge traditional boundaries between academic approaches to ethnography and industrial practices to ensure clients gain unique and highly valuable insights and solutions. Felicity has led and carried out behavioral research projects for large public and private sector clients utilizing ethnographic research methods along with other mixed methods approaches to achieve operational and customer-focused findings and results. Felicity has also led on high-profile social value work, engaging with stakeholders to ensure the impacts of interventions are fully understood. Felicity has also undertaken unique ethnographic work with traffic officers on the Strategic Road Network and one of the largest banking technology centers in Europe. These ethnographies have allowed her valuable insight into socio-technical systems and the cultures which emerge in specific organizational spaces. These commercial ethnographies provide rich data for clients that support business change recommendations, both operational and strategic. Really quickly, before we get into the conversation and she can tell you more about what all that means, I want to be sure you know that there are links in the show notes for everything, including related past episodes, links to articles and books, a full timestamp summary of the episode, and so much more. It's all within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/365. Now let's jump right in. Dr. Felicity Heathcote-Marcz, welcome back to the Brainy Business Podcast.
Thank you so much, Melina. Really happy to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Of course. I'm so excited. I know we've been talking about this coming back again for a while now, so it's exciting to have it come to fruition and be able to chat with you again. I see you on LinkedIn all the time, and it's so nice to be able to actually have a conversation. And what is better than a recorded conversation for the whole world to listen to, right? For our catch up.
Indeed. Nothing indeed.
So for everyone who doesn't yet know you, can you share a little bit about yourself, your background, and the work that you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Melina. So I am a doctor of ethnography, which is an immersive research method. It's using anthropological research methods to understand businesses. So I'm an ethnographer of organizations, first and foremost. And exciting news for me really recently is that I have set up my own business called Bear Analysis. That's BARE analysis. This is an insight consultancy, and we bring together a network of freelancers and access to partner organizations to deliver research projects predominantly, and also services that support insight and research. So strategy, creative, marketing, UX or user experience, and also like accessibility services and project management if required as well. So only work with experts. Really, really excited to have been setting this up just last month, actually. And for me, it's a really exciting time because, you know, we've been hearing a lot recently about currently we're in this time of disruption, this time of change, uncertainty with, you know, the economy and geopolitics and like all these shifts in power and priorities. And that's really impacting organizations. And I think it could be seen as a really scary time to start a business or to start anything new, right? Like people are sort of hunkering down. But actually for me, it's perfect because everything is up for recoding, if you like. So, the rules of the game are kind of ready to be made new, into this new, almost like image of what is really essential. Like what do businesses really need? What, services do we have to keep doing? And, for me, insight and research is really up there. And, this sort of time of uncertainty has just made it more apparent that we need really good insight and research. And so Bear Analysis, I've sort of set this up with the ethos that we want to provide our clients with insights they really need, what's really essential, whether that's solving problems that they already know that they have or identifying problems that are yet to be known, but that really need to be tackled. So those unknown unknowns, if you like, I think they're just becoming more and more important to acknowledge and to understand. And it got me thinking as well in our last conversation. It kind of goes back to that image of the cyborg, which I don't think we got a chance to talk about fully last time that we spoke. But the cyborg really underpinned my PhD research and my first forays into ethnography and into immersive research methods. And for me, it was Donna Haraway's image of this cyborg as this, quite powerful feminist image, and this chimera, if you like, this kind of monster that can bring together lots of different domains and be lots of different things, quite chameleon-like. And I think, Bear has grown up from that. For me, it's almost the logical conclusion of some of that work. And having kind of worked in industry for some years now and seeing this real need for things like ethnography and for insight that will inform decision making in a way that can bring together real specialist skill sets and different domains, different kinds of sectors, because things are just so siloed, normally. And also kind of trying to inform different kinds of clients who are trying to solve problems in different contexts. That's really the kind of work that Bear Analysis is developing at, and that's what we aim to excel at. So hope that wasn't too long-winded and that sort of answered the question.
Oh, never. Yeah, it's always great to be able to talk through. And I love having this conversation at such an early point in this new journey for you with Bear Analysis. That's a really cool opportunity for us, and being able to hear like what has you so inspired and excited, which I know there are plenty of people who are small business owners, entrepreneurs, what have you, that are listening to the show, that tune in often, and they can relate to that moment where you've been thinking about something for a really long time and trying to shape it and bring it together. Out of curiosity, since you're in that moment now, I know there are also people who kind of are living on the fence maybe right now, trying to decide if they should make that leap or not. Do you have any insights into some of the process that you went into, lessons learned in getting started, knowing, again, it's been a few weeks since you launched fully? Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think I'm probably still in that newbie camp that needs to be getting, tips and mentored by other more seasoned business owners. And I've been doing just that, actually. So I suppose that would be one tip from me, having kind of gone into this. And I mean, I'd worked, I'd done freelance work before, worked for myself a little bit previously, and I'd always been a little bit entrepreneurial at school and sort of, made a bit of money in the playground, selling various things like rings, like random things like that. But this is the first time, sort of taking it very seriously. You have to get all the admin set up and, have to kind of know what you're doing, self-assessment and things like that. So I suppose, one of the tips I would suggest anyone thinking about starting a new business should do is go and seek out others to be mentors, those who have been running their own businesses successfully for many years, those that you would admire and who you feel inspired by. Even if there are people, for example, you follow on LinkedIn, but you don't know them, reach out to them, see if they'll go for coffee with you, see if they'll just share some of their, knowledge and insights with you from their time. I've been really, lucky in that I've been able to get some great mentorship from some folks who, have either mentored me more formally, like through the Market Research Society, for example. Jennifer Brennan, shout out, she was fantastic, and that we've continued that relationship. And also others, for example, Liz Wallace, again, shout out. She was the MD of Cero Consulting for many years, really, successful consultancy. So it's just fantastic. I think especially if you're a female, seeking out other women who have done that as well, and will give you a unique kind of insight. But I think that's probably like the best tip that I can give at the moment. I mean, it's really exciting that you are in the driving seat of your own future and success. And I think if you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, you'll probably end up doing it at some point, because it just might take something to push you in one direction or another. But sometimes the stars just align, right? And it's like, this is the right time now. Even like I say, if it just seems scary or seems like economically, you want to kind of batten down the hatches, sometimes that's the best time to actually throw a bit of caution to the wind and say, right, now I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this work and go for what I want in life. And I think, that's probably the best advice I could give anybody. Any advice others have, please let me know.
Yeah, I know. I was just, as you were talking, thinking it's like we need some sort of contingent or cohort of experts in this, or just even the like people to go ask who've been there before sort of deal. So I know that I've had so many people over the years that, we connect and they go, so I'm so curious, like you have your own thing, like how did you do this? What does that look like? Right. I get that question a lot. So I know that the listeners are thinking about that. And I'm sure that for you, it's really second nature at this point, because you have a lifestyle, be it in real life or in business only, or training, I suppose, of being really good at asking questions and observing and learning from others, because of your work in ethnography and of course background in anthropology. And so do you have any tips, knowing we'll of course link to your past episode where we really talked about ethnography and what it is in the show notes for everyone. But if you were going to give a tip for someone who is a little bit nervous or scared about asking people questions and doesn't even know how they might do that, or trying to observe better, what might you suggest, whether it's about, starting a business or something else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, putting that researcher hat on, even if you're not a researcher, and thinking about approaching somebody to have a discussion, have a conversation that's meaningful in any way, you should almost, imagine putting a even literal, research hat on. And
yes. Please put a literal research hat on, everyone.
A hat
required
that says research with a sticker, put it on, and then
mandatory. You must put that on. Okay, sorry. Continue.
No, that's all. No, it's no.
The end.
Put a hat on. But one of the things that we try and do as researchers is called active listening, which many of your listeners may have heard of before, or if not, it's really this practice of trying to be fully present in the moment and focused on what your interlocutor, should we call them, someone you're because you're co-creating knowledge with whoever you're talking to. Really, as a researcher, if you've got that research hat on, the questions you're asking are informing something. You're creating some kind of dialogue, some kind of knowledge. So by doing that active listening, it's really trying to make sure that you're staying in that present moment. And with ethnography and the praxis, which needs to be really self reflective and self-reflexive. You need to be really aware of your own body and your own head and what you're doing. But trying to stay in that moment, trying not to become distracted or even be too, led by your own research questions. Actually, you need to be led by that person and the story that that person wants to tell you. So you might approach somebody and, you want to get their tips for starting a business or whatever it might be, which is fine. You can kind of start off like that, but that person will have their own story and will have their own, narrative and way of telling you those tips. And they may have things that they want to say that aren't, part of the narrative you're sort of looking to get out of them. So not seeing a dialogue as a kind of, means to an end or something that's too transactional, but really being present in that story. And then things can emerge, let space for the unexpected come up. So yeah, I think that's probably what I would say in terms of advice about that.
Wonderful. That led me to one follow-up question, which is, do you have and I think this comes up for any sort of, if someone's looking to start to be more curious and just like dip their toe into the idea of ethnography in the work that they're doing, like, do you have a go-to opening question that you ask people, or a way that because you have to like introduce yourself to different types of people that you're potentially nothing like, and you need them to trust you and be open to a conversation very, very quickly, and to show that you're, to be inviting enough, but not overly eager, right? I feel like there's this whole balance of the right way in. So do you have a go-to question or statement or anything that you do in that process?
To be honest, Malia, not really, because like you say, it really does depend on that context and on those different stakeholders that you're talking to. So being able to become part of that stakeholder's world and, like you say, letting that stakeholder trust you will depend very much on your pre-research, if you like. So, try and understand as much about their context as possible. So, if this is somebody in a customer service role, understand as much as you can about that organization, maybe go in and do a mystery shop as a customer, understand what that experience is like, what's happening in that business at the moment, go and do your desktop research. Again, it really depends on the context of why you're there as well, because if you're there doing an academic research study, you might not be too bothered about a lot of the politics, for example, that is going along there. But if you're in as a consultant and you've been brought in by management, you'll have some, added issue to get over, or kind of barrier to get over, in that your interlocutors may think that you're there as a spy, or kind of, to judge them on their performance and that sort of thing, which, it can happen. Ethnographers can be used for that sort of thing by managers. But the best way to, again, have that dialogue that's authentic and truthful, and you can build trust and you can really get the insight that you want from those kinds of stakeholders, is to go in and make sure that they understand that this is, following the ethics of any good ethnography. This is not anonymized research. Nothing that they say will be kind of used against them, as it were, in the future. They are protected, and you care about them as a stakeholder. You're really there to listen and hear and understand their true perspective. So yeah, in terms of opening questions, I mean, it will really depend on that first sort of desktop research and on who you're speaking to. But if you can get a sense of their concerns and a sense of, what's really driving them at the moment, that might be, really different if you're talking to, say, the C-suite, or if you're talking to someone at the coalface. But yeah, definitely, if anyone is thinking about doing that, speak to an ethnographer, and yeah, do your homework, I would say.
Yes. I think that what I see in this, especially as people get nervous or anxious, and if they're getting into a point where they're asking something where they feel like they have something to gain, I think that people then tend to really lean on that like self-deprecating chatter, like weird rambling, in a way that is like apologizing for taking the person's time, but like way over the top in a way that I think would then make this person kind of be questioning, like, why am I even here? Why did I commit to this thing? And so I think that that feels like to me in one of the big don't do this sort of world, like hold yourself back from that. And in my opinion, that the best way, the things to keep in mind are, you have very limited time with this person. You're trying to learn from them. So you speaking the least amount possible is probably the goal.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point. You can go in there and you could, maybe because of nerves, or maybe you've not done your research and, you're not confident in what you're saying, you could end up, like you say, becoming self-deprecating or rambling, etc. And it is really, you're there as a listener, as an active listener, you're there to record the experience of those stakeholders and to record the context and what's happening in that space. We can never be tabula rasas as researchers. We're always going to go in there and we've got our baggage and we've got our models of looking at the world, etc. But as much as possible, be aware of that. And like you say, be aware of how much you're speaking and just try not to be putting your own, kind of value judgments or your own questions too much at the center. Just let things happen. Just hang around. Like let it happen.
Yeah.
And it will be great.
Definitely. I know. I think it's like in that case, if you're, with the idea of doing an informational interview, because you're thinking about starting your own company, you could very quickly have that entire conversation just be you talking about what you're thinking you might do with your business instead of listening to what they had to say and making sure it's a good use of their time. So I think being thoughtful to that is a good additional first step. So yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for going on that fun, we'll say tangent, but I feel like it's important for people that are listening because, like I said, I think, yes. A good tangent. I don't know what our word with that foray. Thank you for that foray into this additional conversation. I would love to hear, I guess, a little bit more about, you were talking about some of that like work and research and where someone's bringing you in. When you were on the show before, we talked a bit about some work you were doing that had to do with transportation and, observing how people drive and things like that. Do you have some additional examples of, when do people need to have ethnography be a part of the work they're doing, and how, do you have examples of how you've helped to kind of change or shape a business?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I think to answer that first point of that question, when should a business or an organization look to do some ethnography? I think it very much depends on what kind of question they are trying to answer. And sometimes the businesses and the organizations that really need ethnography are the ones that don't know it or that know it the least. They maybe haven't heard of it, haven't thought of it, or it's not really part of their current insight methodology, certainly not to deal with internal challenges. And that is often where ethnography can really shine and can really bring the value. It's to support with internal stakeholder engagement, to support with problem definition, because it's the ethnographer going in at the beginning of a, if you like, discovery phase of any sort of project, whether that's internal or, external. That's where the emergence of the, lived reality of the organization will be revealed. And if an organization can understand that from the beginning and understand the problem that they're trying to solve well enough, because we can never fully understand problems. We find that as researchers, there's always more. There's always another problem within a problem, etc. But if we can help businesses and organizations understand their problems well enough, using tools like ethnography, using methods that are immersive and rich, then we'll be able to begin designing the right solutions, at least pointing organizations in the direction that they should be going in to try and start that solutionizing. Because I think a lot of us in consultancy and business who work with clients, we find that often what will happen is that not enough effort and energy is expended at that beginning discovery stage in project, to really, understand the problem, to understand, is this the right problem? Do we know what the problem is, or is it going back to those, unknown unknowns or known unknowns? Once we do that, then the solution can look really different from, well, we're not really going to bother with that. We're just going to jump to a technology or a solution, like AI, for example, is we hear so much now about, AI and ChatGPT, etc. And actually, while I was in Italy, I just got back from Italy today, and I was there for a conference. I posted a little video about how we need more romance in our value propositions to our customers, and this sort of idea of romance, because we're hearing so much these days about sort of AI and other things as well, like methodologies like agile and technology platforms, etc. And it can be awfully sterile and technical and just dull, I think, basically. And what we all really want is a story, and it's a compelling story. We want a narrative that can generate an emotional response and a connection to who we are. And, going back to ethnography, if we can do that for our clients and for organizations at the beginning of any project and help them to define that problem and help them to see their own organization or their own customers' problems differently and create a narrative and create a compelling story, then that is much more valuable than just saying, right, we're going to, bring in some AI to solve this thing over here, when have you really defined what the problem is? Is it really AI to solve that problem? Or is it because, your staff are all fed up and there's a terrible culture? It's sometimes it really just needs that sort of in-depth problem definition. And that's what ethnography can really help with.
Oh, definitely. I, in the preaching to the choir world, and, the audience, has heard me talk about it a lot, about the problem you're solving, understanding the problem. I'll link to, I have an episode on it. It'll be in the show notes for everyone. And I know a question that I get asked a lot really ties into something you were just saying there is, because I'm constantly talking about we need to ask more questions to fully understand the problem. It's super easy to find the right answer to the wrong question. We waste time and money on solving, the wrong problems. And then, the question is, but like, okay, I'm bought in on asking the questions, and how do I know when to stop? Because we can also then just spend our entire lifetime asking too many questions. And as you said, like, we can never fully understand every single aspect of the problem. But like, do you have a response as far as helping to know, okay, this is like the problem or a big enough problem that it's worth focusing on here, and how to, any sort of, telltale signs or things you found in your work as a good point to say, now is time to transition from questioning to doing things? And I bet your answer is it depends. And if we can go beyond that, let's do that too.
Yes, the predictable.
It's my go-to. I've already said I knew. Okay, so we're gonna get either matching shirts or like mugs that say "it depends" on them. So happening.
Do you have a background in research? It depends. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's our go-to phrase and saying. So I think it's a really good question though. Honestly, I think in reality, that question, it's always bounded by your material conditions, right? So it's always bounded by, we've got this much budget, or we've got this much time, or, these stakeholders have 1 hour free on a Friday to help you define the problem. And then we need to report in 3 weeks. So, in reality, those kinds of material conditions, bound what that problem definition phase looks like. And I think the challenge for a lot of us from, insight and research and consultancy backgrounds is to persuade client organizations to invest more time in the problem definition stage, not in the, technology build, design, other stages further down, which are fine, they're important, absolutely. But we could be, like you say, later, asking the wrong questions, building the wrong thing. If we don't get that right, it's so important. So yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I think we could, create a whole epistemology around, what's the right kind of problem, when do we know how well we've defined a problem, etc. But in reality, I think, unfortunately, those material conditions kind of block us in a little bit. And often the debate needs to shift to, we just need a little bit more time here to define the problem. And this is why we need that time, because it's important and it saves money, further down the line. And it will make sure that we're creating value for an organization, but also social value in the world, if we can, get it right first time, if you like, and be designing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I know this becomes our kind of choose your own adventure moment, I would say, which comes up often in the show, where we can go, as explained, right, wherever, what feels good to you. So I know that in kind of our pre-talk, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned the conference you were just at that was looking at futures and, what's on the horizon for us, some of that technology, AI, machine learning, whatever, like aspects there and how that ties in, or anything else in the future stuff, I think is good. Or, if you have a case study or work or research you've done that you think is really exciting or interesting, that has a, surprising lesson that came out of the ethnography piece that people might not have expected, that can showcase kind of that value. And I would say third piece becomes, I know you have a chapter coming out in a new book soon. So if you wanted to talk about that, and, or if you want to talk about anything else, right? You get to really say what feels good to you.
Perfect. This is the me show now. Great.
It's been the me show. It's been the you show the whole time, for sure. It's all you.
me having a chat. No, I won't. Yes, I won't turn that down. So yes, I've been in Italy this week, in Venezia and Padua, tutto bene, at a conference about futures and a couple of other events as well at the Italian Cultural Centre. But the conference was really interesting because it was looking at, like you say, these trends for the sort of short-term future up to 2025, and models and risks, and sort of how can we think about the future. And bear analysis fits really well into this, because my aim is that we will support businesses make sense of the future and what these different futures mean for them. And at the conference, there was this really interesting concept talked about, plural singularities. So, and I talked about it a little bit in my LinkedIn video as well, but how the future at the moment is very fragmented, and you've got, those of us who've got very, very different sort of political and world views, and that's informing our expectations of the future. Is it utopia? Is it dystopia? Is it, is it AI? Is it all, doomsday, climate crisis, etc.? And how can we sort of navigate that, and how can we support organizations to understand what do those different plural futures, mean for them, and how can they navigate that? And at the moment, I'm supporting some clients to think about strategy for the sort of short and medium term for their organization, and looking at futures. And I think, again, now is a really interesting time, because yes, you've got AI and you've got ChatGPT kind of coming along and changing the game for research specifically, because now, for the first time, you've got an algorithm that's able to sift through, so much information and actually provide you with something quite sensible, really sort of sensible paragraphs of meaning, in terms of, a massive desktop review of whatever's published out there in the internet. And really that's literature review, right? That's the kind of research that many researchers have been doing for a very long time, and ChatGPT's kind of come along and revolutionized that really quickly. And for me, it was interesting having a think about that and the impact of these technologies for research and for insight, because actually for me it shows that there's never been more need and more value than now for really insightful research that is embodied and that brings networked insights to bear on really complex questions that organizations have. So questions about culture, questions about people and politics and business problems that organizations are really facing today, and they're not simple questions that can be answered by an algorithm. That can, sure, you can do a desktop review, but how can we then make meaning from that? And how can we then know what to do next and what that right decision is? So for me, it was really interesting thinking about these themes at the conference, and, in the next few weeks and months supporting some of my clients to be thinking about these things as well. So the fact that insights like that are never more needed than now, never more valuable, and not sort of losing sight of that and feeling, it's all been taken away by AI and algorithms like ChatGPT, when actually it's not at all. It's really putting into quite stark relief how much we need that really good quality insight.
Definitely. While you were talking, I was reminded of, and it's like a snip of a video of something I saw in passing, to where apologies to the world, that I have no idea who the professor was that was saying this and where they teach or anything along those lines. But there was a question that had to do with some tips on as you look at the problem that you have a lot of universities and things having with having students wanting to use ChatGPT, of course, and then you had issues where many people using that to write a paper or to answer whatever it is. And when you look at, I think, really building on what we were just talking about and understanding the problem and like taking that step back and thinking about it in a different way, where she was saying that, you end up with, the go-to thing is we as the teacher, the university, the institution, the company, whatever, are trying to hold on to our own status quo of the way that we've always done things and how it should be done and how we did it, right? And so you feel like, we're going to put up trying to find new AI, like an AI to identify the AI so we can catch someone when they tried to use ChatGPT or whatever else to write their paper, right? That we're going to somehow, you're layering all this complexity into it. And, like she was saying, it's never going to do as well as you think it should. And even like trying to shut down Wi-Fi stuff or all these things, it's a whole mess, right? To try to make that happen. But if you instead stop and we embrace that they are going to use it, and this is a part of the future of their life now, right? It's not that people need to know how to use this in the right way and what it can't do for you. So if instead your assignment is, say, go home, and do a first draft of this using ChatGPT to do the first draft of the paper, and then you're going to come into the class and we're going to have a discussion about, and you're going to be working on what questions come up for you based on the response that it gave, and how might you look to expand on a certain thought, like that. It's using your knowledge in a new way and turning that into a tool instead of this thing to be afraid of, and knowing people need new skills now. I think it was such a prime example of how we just naturally get it wrong and how it's such an obvious way to do it when it's laid out for you that way. But I think very few people would naturally get there themselves. And I think that has lessons for companies as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been interesting for me speaking to some of my old colleagues who are still in academia, who are still, marking papers from students and still very much in that world where, cheating happens, and it's always happened. And whether it's sort of essay farms or now ChatGPT, any teacher worth their salt knows their students, they know their voice, they are fully aware when they've used ChatGPT to write their essay or to do their coursework, you know. And I think, like you say, it's calling that out and saying, right, you know, you can't outsource your brain here. Like, you know, it's fine to use that as a maybe desktop review, you know, as a research tool for doing that. But those tools around thinking critically, being able to write properly, you know, create an argument and evaluate different perspectives, those are things that are critical for students, any kind of student, but also critical for organizations, you know, when they're hiring and you know, when they're bringing in consultants, etc. The last thing that an organization is going to want, and the most unvaluable thing for them, would be just to hire someone that's going to use ChatGPT, right, to create research and create value, because that isn't creating value. That's already there. Anybody can do that. And so, yeah, again, it just demonstrates to me the real importance of having those skills, and they're actually more valuable than they ever have been, because now everybody can use ChatGPT. So,
yeah. And I think that the tool is only as good as the questions you know to ask, and being able to understand when something comes back and you can say, no, that's not what I meant. How do I ask this in a different way, right? You can deduce what's happening there. And if you don't have that underlying knowledge, it's not as useful of a tool as it could be. So it's an interesting balance, and I think conundrum for people moving forward, which it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together as time goes on. So in just, do you have any last things that you might want to touch on? Just a last point or thought before we close out the show?
I will just plug that book chapter, actually. Thank you, Melina, for the reminder. Yes, I'm delighted to have a book chapter coming out with my co-collaborator, Dr. Sadiq Mohammed. So we have got a chapter in Emerald's upcoming title, Ethnographies of Work. And this actually gets us back to the relevance of ethnography from covering hidden problems and solutions for organizations. So our book chapter focuses on a set of ethnographic vignettes, or kind of mini stories from my time doing ethnography with traffic officers. So those folks who are out there on the strategic road network in England, so basically our motorway network and major A roads, who are supporting people that have broken down, but also doing so much more, you know, dealing with incidents. They support police, ambulance and fire when there are incidents as well, clear debris. You know, they do a lot of things. They are not a first responder or emergency service, but they do a lot of the things that those services do. And it's quite an interesting kind of politics. And it was absolutely fascinating spending time with traffic officers, and also those who were behind the scenes at the call centers, you know, taking SOS calls from the SOS phones, etc. Really amazing, the job they do, and really important. And it's one of those sort of hidden jobs, if you like, that we don't often get to see or hear about. So ethnography was used as this technique to fully explore the embodied realities of being a traffic officer. And this work was able to reveal the importance of the concept of the breakdown. So that's what we're exploring in the book chapter. So we talk about breakdowns not just as this, you know, thing that happens on the side of the motorway in a car. That's one kind of breakdown. But we also have this concept called the fractal of breakdown. So you've got breakdowns all the way down, basically. So all the way from your macroeconomic cost of living crisis, you know, meaning that drivers are sort of forced to skimp on their maintenance and break down cover, and even putting petrol into their cars. So therefore they break down. But also the breakdown of a rules-based model of organization. So when you've got stakeholders doing dangerous jobs and you know, doing jobs with members of the public, and, you know, it's a very dynamic environment out there on the road network, on the motorways especially. You've got these moral dilemmas that are there every day, and that traffic officers are having to navigate, and that, you know, image, almost sort of fixed image of an organization with rules, and that, you know, it's got a certain hierarchy, and it's got certain things that you do and you don't do. That doesn't apply really in an environment like that, and it was fascinating to learn from these stakeholders how they did manage to kind of navigate, what's written and what's stated and the rules, if you like, but then the realities of, somebody wants to jump off a bridge, or, somebody is at risk of harming others, etc. And they're first on scene. Like, often they'll have to make a decision, even if that's really difficult from an embodied point of view, and not easy and not straightforward. So all these different kinds of sort of breakdown that we discovered, and again, ethnography was the only methodology that would have allowed us to get at that really interesting, like, embodied reality for that stakeholder group, and therefore support the organization in understanding their own stakeholders and understanding what they want for the future, and supporting the organization to create that more kind of knowledge-based set of principles for the future, that's really based on that embodied, rich lived experience. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations that want to improve culture, that are seeking to do culture change programs and support their own employees, they should really look to that methodology as a first point of call, like we were saying earlier, as sort of part of that discovery phase, really, because it can really reveal some amazing truths, like home truths, that can be really, really valuable for management to listen to.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on that chapter coming out. It looks like, assuming I found the right one, don't know that there are tons of books called Ethnographies of Work, but it looks like it's coming out in December of 2023 here, which means in the fun sort of meta world that comes with this type of life, while it has not yet come out, it will have already come out by the time the episode comes out. So there'll be a link in the show notes for everyone to check that, as well as ways to get in contact with you and to help them on their journey to learn more and connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Would love to hear from any of your listeners, Melina. They can contact me on LinkedIn, I think would be where I mostly hang out. So it's Felicity Heathcote-Marcz, M-A-R-C-Z, on LinkedIn. It's only one of me, so you will find me. I'm also on Twitter at Sharp Sister as well. And if anyone wants to shoot me an email, it's felicity@bare-analysis.co.uk. That's BARE analysis.
Perfect. And we never put emails in the show notes because I care about your inbox, and spam is real. And so for everyone who was listening and you want to go, rewind 30 seconds, write that down. That's great. And we'll definitely put the links, though, to your website and to your Twitter/X, whatever we call it these days, LinkedIn, to the book. X. I know. So it'll all be waiting for everyone. And Felicity, thanks again so much for the great conversation and joining me again on the show today.
Thanks so much, Melina. Really happy to be there among all your glittering Illuminati. Thanks for having me.
I love it. The glittering Illuminati is the new go-to descriptor for guests of the podcast. Thanks. Thank you again to Dr. Felicity Heathcote-Marcz for joining me on the show today. What got your brain buzzing in today's conversation? For me, I always enjoy speaking with Felicity and anyone with a background in anthropology, ethnography, and similar fields. This focus on humans and how they interact together, the cultural norms and insights into how people really operate, it's so fascinating and important for businesses. Whether you realize it or not, there are so many tribes and groups with different norms within your organization. You're part of some of them, but not all of them. So having someone come in who can evaluate those groups and help provide important insights about how to communicate with them, what to know about them, what motivates them, what drives their behavior, the slang terms they use, all sorts of things. They can be so important when it comes to applying behavioral economics and any of the other work you're doing. And yes, this applies both to your customers and your internal teams. It's fascinating stuff. And as you heard a little already, this isn't the first time we're talking about it here on the Brainy Business. There are links to several past episodes in the show notes for you if you want to expand your learnings in this area, including my first conversation with Felicity, my first interview with Priscilla McKinney on how anthropology and marketing go hand in hand, as well as last week's episode with Leanne Potter on being a cyber anthropologist and why that matters in business. Links to all those related past episodes and books, as well as ways to connect with Felicity and check out Bear Analysis, are waiting for you in the show notes for the episode, which can be found within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/365. And thank you again to Dr. Felicity Heathcote-Marcz for joining me on the show today. It was a delight to chat with and learn from you. Join me Tuesday for another Brainy episode of the Brainy Business Podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.